This is the first video in a series where I will explore the wisdom of acupuncture points. Now, most of us might think that exploring acupuncture points is something that is just for acupuncturists. But what I will show is how all of us, whether we are coaches, facilitators, leaders, or anyone who wants to deeply transform their own life, learning about acupuncture points and the wisdom that they impart is absolutely invaluable. In this particular video, what I'm going to do is explore an overview of what is an acupuncture point and why is it relevant to all of us in our own personal transformation and in our capacity to support those around us to transform and thrive. Hi, my name is Alexander Love, and I'm a coach, an acupuncturist, and a facilitator. And if you're interested in deeply transforming your life in positive ways, if you want to learn how to eliminate suffering and really tap into the depths of what it means to be human, then go ahead and like and subscribe and click that little bell so that you never miss an opportunity to explore together and to make this world a better place. So what is an acupuncture point? Well, if we look at the character for acupuncture point, what we see is essentially a cave. This is a place that we can enter, and then when we go into that cave, there is a territory or a set of territories as we look at various acupuncture points. Now, another character that we want to look at here is the character for men. Men means gateway. And when you're in acupuncture school and they're teaching us how to find the points on the body, they say, look for the men. And what that means is find the gateway. Find the gateway to the point. And when we look at the character for men, what we'll find is essentially there's two leaves of a door. This is an opening. We open, we go through a gateway into a territory. And that, in the most basic, most simple form, is what an acupuncture point is. So if an acupuncture point is essentially a gateway into a territory, then the next question that arises is, well, what's the territory? So the first aspect of this, when we're looking at what is an acupuncture point, we can say that an acupuncture point is a place where you and I store things that have been painful in our lives that we were unable to be present to. This can be true psychologically. This can also be true physically. So let me give an example. Let's say I am outside and there's black ice on the ground. It's super slippery. I don't really know that it's slippery. And as I'm moving in my body, I slip. And depending on how free my body is, how agile, how resilient it is, I'm going to either not fall or I'm going to fall, but I will do so in a way that is an embodiment of flexibility and resiliency. Now, let's use another example where maybe I'm a little bit more rigid in my body. I'm not as accustomed to moving freely. I'm not as confident on my feet. I also walk on this black ice. I slip and I fall. And because my body has less freedom, it has less resiliency, less capacity to move with the way life is inviting me to move, the impact is far more intense. This brings up the question, how much resource in my system do I have to be able to meet the impact of the force? If I'm stressed out, my nervous system is shaking, and I am living with a fearful disposition in my body, waiting for something to happen, all of this unconscious to me. I'm tired, I haven't slept well, I don't exercise, I don't eat well, whatever it is, my resources are more depleted. The impact of the force, one, is more intense because of the lack of fluidity and freedom and resiliency. And two, I have less capacity to be present and move with and digest the force. So then the question arises, what does the body do with this? Well, the body tends to take whatever we are unable to experience, in this case a physical example, and we will store that in our body. One of the places we will store this are in particular acupuncture points that relate to the way in which we were tight, lacked freedom, or the places, the local environment that we smashed into, or the way that our body responded to how we smashed into. Now, let's give a psychological example. Let's say I'm in a relationship, it's all going well, everything seems peachy, I'm sure that we're in love and that we'll be in love forever, and then next thing I know, I discover that my partner was cheating on me. This becomes an experience of intense sensation, we might say, right? I have an experience of how I thought things were, and then all of a sudden there was a break in trust, a break in intimacy, and there's a rushing of pain. Again, it brings up the question, how resourced am I? If I am resourced enough to remain present throughout the entire experience of the betrayal, working through the betrayal, and whatever happens as a result of the betrayal, then I probably won't somatize the experience. I won't hide or place into what we might call latency, place into hiding the experiences that I'm having. There's a capacity for relative freedom in relationship to the experiences of pain. I'm present, I'm able to be with the pain. I can say, yeah, this really sucks, and we really need to work some things out, and I have to make some serious choices that I wasn't planning on making in my life, but I'm capable and present, and I'm going to do it. Now, let's say instead, I'm tired, I'm stressed out, I haven't learned how to be with pain. Perhaps I grew up in a society where everybody tells me that I should feel good, and if I don't feel good, then I maybe watch Netflix or get drunk or do a bunch of things to avoid. But let's say I never learned how to really be with the richness of pain with presence. So the betrayal happens. There's an impact. I experience a rush of sensations. I experience a rush of stories about what's happened, what this means about me, what this means about us, all this kind of stuff. And whatever I'm not able to be present to, the intelligent body, the intelligent psyche, is going to take those experiences and it's going to store them. Where? In our body, in our acupuncture points. Now, the thing that's interesting here is that generally Westerners think about the mind as something that's located here in our head, and then the body is this thing that's dangling from the head. So when they talk about the body, they mean from here down. And usually when people think about thinking, they think about their mind, they're talking about their head. Well, what I'd like to propose here is that instead we look at the mind as something that is distributed. We know, for example, that the brain, yes, there is a thing in our head of gray matter that we call the brain, but we also now know that the brain is distributed, that the intelligence, the functionality of our brain is not just in the head, but it is throughout our entire body. Similarly, our psyche is distributed. It is not local to here, it is global throughout our entire organism. Our mind and our body are one, quite literally. You can imagine this as my mind as a landscape that is filling the entirety of the landscape of your body. They are together. So what does this mean? This means that we have all these little caves all over our body. And when we experience something in life that we don't have the capacity to be fully present to, then the result is little aspects of this experience that is going to be lodged throughout our system within these acupuncture points. So acupuncture points are both an aspect of our body energetic physiology, as well as acupuncture points have interiority. That means that they have an energetic component that's related to how we move in our body, how our organs are functioning properly or improperly. So they have that kind of almost physical dimension to them, but they also have psychological dimensions to them. So when we have this experience of betrayal that we're not able to be present to, that will be stored in our bodies, in these little acupuncture points, in these little caves. And it'll be stored specifically in the acupuncture points that have a direct relationship to betrayal or anger or grief. Whatever emotional experiences we have that we're not able to fully embrace because they're too damn painful, it's going to be the acupuncture points that relate to those specific emotions that experience that we can't be present with is going to be stored. Okay, so now we understand that acupuncture points are these little caves. We understand that these caves are part of our body and part of our psyche. We understand that they are a gateway through which we can enter into physiological dimensions of pain or physiological dimensions of disharmonious patterns. Our digestion isn't working right, or our heart isn't working right. But we can also use these gateways to enter into our embodied psyche, to make contact with the places that we could not face at the time of an intense event. Now, why do we want to do that? Why don't we just keep them stored forever? Storing things in our embodied psyche has both psychological and physiological impacts. It takes energy to keep something hidden. It takes energy to keep something latent. It takes energy to keep something hidden in the dark rather than as an aspect of the fullness of our lives. When we're having an experience that is too much to bear, sometimes for survival purposes, we do need to place these things into hiding. However, if we continue over time to pile on more and more and more stuff that we're not facing, it begins to have a negative psychological and physiological impact. We don't feel well because it turns out that the degree that we push away pain often is attributed with the degree that we are able to feel positive things like love, joy, aliveness, engagement, dynamism, saying yes. And so if I numb out over here, it tends to numb out everything. So then my life becomes dull. It becomes humdrum. If I learn how to embrace these places of pain and allow those things to come back to the light of day, something happens. I begin to make contact with deeper virtues, deeper qualities of being, deeper, more subtle aspects of being alive because I allowed myself to become unnumb to my experiences of life, the painful experiences of life, and that allows me to become unnumb to the ecstasy of life. The ecstasy wakes up, the joy wakes up, the freedom wakes up, the aliveness wakes up. Therefore, we can see that these acupuncture points, these embodied portals, these embodied gateways become a way in which you and I can access these things that have been hiding so that they can become liberated and, yes, painful to experience, But through that liberation, something new awakens in us that is positive, that is beautiful, that allows for more intimacy with our own experience and more intimacy with life. So back to the betrayal example, very often when people feel betrayed, they shut down and they say, I'm not going to be hurt like that again. And they keep their pain numbed out. I don't want to feel. I don't want to feel. So if I don't want to feel that pain, I'm not going to be able to feel love either. But if I'm able to learn how to go in there and use these acupuncture points to discover these places that I've numbed out to, and I've learned how to embrace that and allow that to awaken and teach me, if I can do that, then I'll be able to be intimate with life again. Because our system seems to have this interest in our learning process. If we aren't present to the experiences of life, we stop learning. Sometimes it's not the time to learn. It's the time to protect ourselves. It's the time to be able to shut down long enough to just be able to survive a little bit. But who wants to live like that forever? These little embodied gateways, what they do is they provide an opportunity for us to discover how to more deeply learn again by becoming aware and present and in contact with the things that hurt. And that awakens a deeper capacity for love. Acupuncture points are not just places where we store pain, but they are also places where we can access qualities of wholeness, which, by the way, is precisely what we need to be able to embrace pain. There are many dimensions of wholeness. You can think of all of the adjectives. The gentle embrace. It warmed my heart. The closeness was sweet. It was tender. And it woke me up to the depth of intimacy, of what's possible within human connection. What I'm describing here are words that speak to a quality of experience. Every single acupuncture point, of which there are hundreds, represents a slightly different quality of being. So, as someone who's interested in transformation, for coaches, for leaders, and of course for acupuncturists, what this means is that an exploration of acupuncture points means an exploration of various qualities of being that enable us to embrace the fullness of who we are, the fullness of life, and that actually act as embodied resources to allow us and enable us to face the things in our lives that are most difficult to face. Finally, acupuncture points carry stories that have been developed over thousands of years. And these stories get updated every time a human being seeks to give voice to the deeper meaning of an acupuncture point. As culture, we grow, we change, we evolve. Our bodies change, our psyches change, which means that acupuncture points change. Acupuncture points themselves have to evolve because as stories, the stories that we live in as human beings evolve. The importance of this is that as human beings, we have been living in story as long as we have been speaking, as long as we have been able to communicate with the beautiful sense of language, dialogue, conversation. We have been making sense of our world through story. And we tell stories to one another that have images and symbols of pain, of triumph, of challenge, of liberation. This is in all of our stories. We're wired for stories. Every single acupuncture point has its own set of stories that include both the pain that we described, as well as the embodied wholeness that we described, which means that every single acupuncture point, it expresses a story of human challenge to human discovery. And by looking at acupuncture points, not only do we learn how to be in our bodies in a new way, we get a story about how human beings can live when they are in struggle so that they can live well. Because the struggle is not the problem. It's the resistance or the confusion or the inability to be with the struggle in a fruitful way. That's the problem. That's the heart of suffering. I don't know how to be with what the hell is happening. That's the problem. It's not that I'm in pain. Acupuncture points can offer us a narrative, and each one has its own narrative around how we can embody ourselves differently, embrace specific qualities of challenge in a certain new way, so that we can really tap in to the heart and potential of being human. In future videos, what I'm going to do is I will take one acupuncture point at a time, and I will explore it, illuminating some of the themes that I've introduced in this video. If you're an acupuncturist and there are specific acupuncture points that you'd like me to cover, go ahead and post that in the comment section. If you're not an acupuncturist, what you can do is you can just post different themes of human experience that you would like me to explore, and I'll pick the acupuncture points for you, and I will present them related to the content that you're curious about.